Mandy was found on the South Fork of the Nooksack River, probably close to 5.5, 6 miles from her house.
There was a bend in the river and some debris, and the body was just hung up in the debris there.
I saw her body. She was face down. She was just kind of suspended, just a little bit off the bottom.
She was naked except for shoes and socks on.
The tennis shoes matched the description.
The detective that was with me dispatched himself in a quick fashion to get to the family home to let her know we had found her.
A weekend in June 2018, the location is a park in Bellingham, Washington. Heather Backstrom and Mary Lee Anderson, two women, had come to the park for their children to play. The two women are both in their 40s. They had attended school together. The two meet after a long time. Therefore, after leaving the children to play, both of them sat on the bench and started talking. The topic of conversation was their family life and work. At one point, when the talk came to their school life, they remembered a girl named Mandy Stavik. 24 years ago, in 1989, Mandy Stavik, who was their senior at school, was a child who was brutally murdered during sexual abuse. When this case, which has been a cold case for 24 years without finding the suspect, became the topic of the conversation, both of them opened about some events that happened in their life that they want to forget. They didn't think that this outspokenness would help prove the Mandy Stavik cases, which have remained cold case for years. Who was Mandy Stavik, and what happened to her? On April 16, 1971, Mandy Stavik was born. Mandy's parents were Glenn and Mary Stavik. She had two brothers named Brent and Lee, and a sister named Mary. Mandy was the youngest of the four. When Glenn and Mary Stavik divorced in 1974, Mary Stavik took the custody of all the children. The very next year, the first tragedy happened in their family. Mary's oldest son Brent went on a hunting trip to Alaska at the age of 70, and Brent died in an accident there. With this incident, Mary Stavik moved with her three children to the small village named Acme in Washington. Acme was a scenic village inhabited by very few people, and there are less than 800 houses there. As very few people lived there, everyone knew each other. Mandy was loved by everyone during her school days. She was such an active child. Not only was she good at studies, Mandy was active in extracurricular activities. Mandy, who was a member of the school band, used to play flute and saxophone. She's also interested in athletics. She was also a member of the basketball and softball team. Mandy excelled in all areas, and her teacher always told me that she had a bright future. After graduating from Mountbatten High School, Mandy wanted to become a commercial pilot. Therefore, at the age of 18, she joined Central Washington University for higher studies. Mandy was staying in the university hostel. In the hostel life, she missed the country life a lot, especially going for morning jogs. A river flows 7 kilometers away from their house, the Nooksack River. Every morning, Mandy used to go for jogging along the beautiful path of this river bank. Her mother sometimes follows her on her bicycle. Otherwise, they have a German shepherd named Kiara at home. She goes jogging with that dog. After reaching the university hostel, Mandy started to miss all this very well. Mandy had a boyfriend at high school. His name is Rick Sender. It was a relationship that both their families knew very well. Even if Mandy forgot to see Rick when she was home on vacation, she didn't skip jogging. She didn't know that this one habit which benefits the body and brings joy to the mind would be the cause of her death. On November 23, 1989, Central Washington University sent the children home on leave. Mandy came home very happy. November 24, as many cousins came to their house that day, Mandy could not go jogging in the morning. She wasn't ready to wait until the next day either. That day, after lunch around 2:30 p.m., Mandy took her dog Kiara and went jogging. Mandy left after telling her mother that she was going by the usual route. Even after hours, Mandy did not come back home. Since she was home on vacation, Mary at first thought she might have gone to see her boyfriend Rick. But when the dog that went with Mandy returned home by itself, they smelled the danger. Mary suddenly called Rick. Rick was at home at the time. When Rick picked up the phone and said he hadn't seen Mandy today and that she hadn't told him that she was coming this way, Mary began to feel that something strange had happened. Without even hesitating to look elsewhere, Mary immediately informed the police. Police have started a search. Everyone in the area knew that Mandy was missing. The search was conducted by the police and locals. The police went directly to all households along Mandy's regular jogging route. Many have seen Mandy return home with her dog after jogging. Mandy's brother Lee saw Mandy returning from jogging when he was at his friend Jeremy's house. Their house was only 10 minutes walking distance from Jeremy's house. It means that someone has kidnapped her to this one camp. They searched for Mandy the whole day but could not find her. The next morning, a large police team headed by Detective Rod Peterson went out to search. Using police dogs, they searched everywhere. There was no result. It's been 3 days since the search was started. The decision that day was to conduct a search led by divers in Nooksack River, 7 km from Mandy's house. For that, several boats of the fire department were brought from the nearby district of Nooksack River. The search was started in the river early in the morning, and the search yielded results within a few hours. Mandy Stavik's body was found by the search team in Nooksack River without even a cloth on her body. She had serious injuries on the back of her head. With this, it was confirmed that it was a murder. The news of Mandy Stavik's murder brought grief not only to her family, but also to the country itself. The girl, who was so loved by locals, who had great goals in mind and showed talent in all fields, has been brutally murdered. The locals request the police to find the killer immediately. The dead body was then handed over to the family the next day after the postmortem. Mandy is brutally sexually assaulted. She was hit on the back of the head with an iron weapon. But the medical examiner found that the death occurred due to drowning in the river. That means the killer kidnapped her and tortured her somewhere. After that, she was beaten on the head with an iron weapon. Thinking that Mandy is dead, the killer throws her body in the river and escapes. But she still had life. Mandy was unable to escape even though she knew swimming. Police have started investigating the case. The police officers, after investigating, they came to find that Mandy's boyfriend Rick used to fight with Mandy several times. After knowing these, the police became suspicious of Rick. He is taken into custody and questioned. But not only did the police not get any hint of his involvement in the murder, but also they realized that Mandy's murder had left him mentally depressed. During 1980s, all the selected police officers were given training on how to detect DNA from any evidence found at a crime scene. In the same year, Ron Peterson, who investigated Mandy's case, was selected for this training. After completing his training, he returned and made a very important discovery in the case. He extracted the killer's DNA. The medical examiner who conducted the postmortem already found the semen sample from Mandy's body. Ron Peterson extracted the DNA from it. Even then, the FBI's database did not have as many DNA samples from criminals as it does today. With this, the DNA profile found by Ron Peterson was handed over to FBI, but it did not match the DNA of any criminal in their database. After this, the police decided to conduct an investigation focusing on the men of Acme, the village where Mandy Stavik lived. If the killer was someone in that village, which has less than 100 houses, the police hoped to find them quickly. The police plan was to interrogate everyone and prepare a list of suspects and conduct DNA tests on them. But it is not that easy. Conducting a DNA test on that day is very expensive, and even if the government is willing to bear the cost, they cannot be tested without someone's consent. Now, if they want to do so, they should convince the court what are the chances of their involvement in the murder and get a separate order. This is not an easy task. However, the investigation team was able to conduct DNA tests on 30 men from the area of Acme. Unfortunately, none of those 30 DNAs matched the killer's DNA. This adversely affected the case investigation using DNA. If the killer is outside of Acme, it is impractical to conduct such a DNA test. With this, the investigators started to examine other possibilities to prove the case. As the location of the murder could not be established, the investigation of the case slowed down as no further evidence was found. Gradually, this also started turning into a cold case. Then 20 years later, Detective Kevin Bowie takes over the case, and the case remains under investigation. As he studied the entire case file, he noticed one person's name in particular. His name is John Wisenski. He was a drug dealer then and was interrogated by the investigation team 20 years ago. John was also involved in the DNA test of 30 people, but John's DNA did not match the killer's DNA. Detective Kevin had a reason to notice John's name. John was a man who told the police that he knew Mandy's killer 20 years ago. Later, John came on the suspect list and his DNA was tested when he gave up saying many opposing things during the interrogation. Investigators later interrogated John several times, but nothing more could be learned from him. Detective Kevin, wondering if he might have something to say after 20 years, starts trying to find John. That's when he realized that years later, he shifted to Cambodia. Detective Kevin goes to Cambodia to look for John and finds him. But John gave a very disappointing statement that he was under the influence of drugs when he was interrogated, and he did not know who killed Mandy. The case investigation is stuck again. 4 years passed. The incident mentioned at the beginning took place in June 2013. On a weekend in June 2013, two women named Heather Backstrom and Mary Lee Anderson met in a park. They were worried that Mandy's mysterious death, who was their senior, could not be proven even after 24 years. And they started to share about the incidents that happened in their lives. Mary was the first to say that, "Years ago, when my husband went on a hunting trip, my daughter and I were the only ones in the house. At that time, a person who was a friend of my husband came to the house. He said that his phone is complained and asked if he can use my phone. As he was my husband's friend, I allowed him to make the call and I went back to my room. She was calling someone. After some time, he came into my bedroom saying that the phone is not connecting. Suddenly he said he likes me and tried to hug me. When I made noise and I said I called the police, he left the house. After that, he never even tried to talk to my husband and me." When Mary said that the person who did this deed was named Thimothy, Heather revealed that this Thimothy had also done a bad deed in her life also. One day, Heather and her boyfriend Dan and Thimothy were traveling in a car. Thimothy was Dan's friend. Dan was driving the car and I was sitting in the front seat. Thimothy was sitting behind me in the back seat. In Dan's presence, Thimothy tried to touch me badly. When Dan found out, there was a big fight and Thimothy was let out of the car. It was then the two women started to think that why Thimothy couldn't be Mandy's killer, because Thimothy was no stranger to either of them. He is a person who studied as their senior in the school. That means Thimothy knows Mandy too. They thought that someone who had done this to them would surely do the same to many others. But 24 years have passed since Mandy was murdered. They don't know if there is any point in telling these things to anyone now. Both of them were worried if it wasn't Thimothy who did it, it would be like trying to implicate him in the case for nothing. However, very coincidentally, 24 years after the murder, they decided to tell someone that they had such a suspicion. That's how they remembered the name Ken Gates. Ken was their classmate in school and now he's a policeman. Mary Lee confides all these things to Ken. They also openly said that they have doubts about him in the Mandy Stavik case too. Ken brings all this to the attention of Kevin, the detective investigating Molly's case. Kevin, who was worried about how to proceed with the case, learned this information and investigated Thimothy in detail. Timothy's house was located not too far from Mandy's regular jogging route. Everyone had only good things to say about his family. Timothy's family members were also involved in the search to find Mandy Stavik during her disappearance. In January 1990, Thimothy married a young woman named Gina and moved to Everson City, 30 km from Acme. 3 children were born to Thimothy and Jean. He worked as a delivery driver at a bakery outlet. Timothy had a very normal life. He is not involved in any criminal cases till date. Since there was no doubt about the family, they were ruled out when the DNA test was done 24 years ago. At first, Detective Kevin thought that the two women were trying to trap Timothy in the case due to some previous rivalry. After questioning him, Kevin changed his mind. When Timothy was asked about Mandy Stavik, he replied that he did not remember such a girl. With this answer, the police became suspicious of him in the very first question. A mysterious murder that took place near their home 24 years ago. A case that is still a topic of the discussion, even after many years. Above all, a girl who studied at Timothy's school. He told the police that he does not remember her. Police said to him that they have some doubts in this case, so police asked if he can give his saliva sample for DNA test. But Timothy refused to give the sample. As I said earlier, if there is no evidence, one cannot take a DNA sample from someone without their consent. When such situations arise, the police do not use direct methods to collect DNA samples from suspects. They will try to follow them and collect samples without their knowledge. With this, Detective Kevin prepared a team to monitor Timothy's every move. Somehow they have to find something that Timothy left behind so that they can extract the DNA. That was their task. Police conducted surveillance at the bakery where he worked. Finally, with the help of the bakery manager, they got a plastic cup that was used by him to drink water. The investigation team sent it to the lab for testing. Then the DNA was extracted and matched with the killer's DNA. After some days, the result came from the lab. To everyone's shock, the result came that Timothy's DNA matched the DNA of the killer. It took almost 4 years for the police to match Timothy's DNA after two women, Mary Lee and Heather, passed on the information about Timothy to the police. Timothy was arrested by the police on December 12, 2017 for raping and killing Mandy Stavik. During the interrogation, Thimothy not only denied all the charges but also made another disclosure that complicated the investigation of the case. Mandy Stavik and I had a secret relationship. We had 6 hours before she died. That is why I refused to give the saliva sample, Timothy told the police. With this, it took the police another 2 years to prove in court that he was lying and that Timothy was the one who killed Mandy Stavik. On May 24, 2019, the jury returned a verdict in this case after considering the evidence and the DNA evidence against him, finding that Timothy was the killer. 30 years later, at the age of 50, Thimothy was sentenced to 24 years in prison. Two girls who studied together at school meet after many years. As the two of them were just talking, they were actually helping the police prove the cold case that many investigators had been looking into and couldn't prove. That is the highlight of this case. It seems that why shouldn't they inform the police earlier? But at that time, they must have felt that this was a small incident in their life. After many years, they came to know that the same person who has done such acts in their lives at the topic of conversation was Mandy, which made them suspicious, and it helped the police officers to prove this case anyway. Comment about your opinion on what you think about this case.